Hey, what's going on, guys? Room Gaming here, back in another video. Today's episode, we're going over the Holy Paladin in Season 4 of Dragonflight, kind of how it's feeling, whether or not you should play Holy Paladin, and just kind of a general overview of how it feels to me personally. Now, on the footage that you're seeing below, this is just a heroic dungeon. This is just an alt, but I have played Holy Paladin in previous seasons, so I should kind of know how it feels. And just a future update for this channel, I am kind of changing from just playing Mistweaver Monk, and I'm going to try to cover all of the healers going into War Within. I'm hoping to get beta access here pretty soon so I can run through some of the classes, some of the specs, and kind of share with you guys how I think they're feeling. So let's go over some of the pros, and hopefully by the end of the video, you can make a decision on whether or not you want to play Holy Paladin yourself. So typically with a Holy Paladin, you're going to have two main pros. You're going to have really good spot healing, and you're going to have a really good tank healing as well. So you have really bursty spells like a Word of Glory, a Holy Shock, a Flash of Light, and you're also going to have your beacons that you can kind of play around, right? You heal one target and that healing gets dispersed onto your beacons. Another thing that Holy Paladin has going for them is their immunity and their survivability, right? So we're able to run in, pop a bubble, pop a Blessing of Protection, a Sacrifice. We have Battle Res. We have so many different forms of immunity, survivability, and just general utility. And that's not even to mention, we have our blessings. We also have our Devotion Aura and our Retribution Aura as well. So this is something that kind of differs from, let's just say, a Mistweaver Monk, for example. They have really good throughput, but not as much utility. And with Holy Paladin, you're actually seeing the opposite end of the spectrum with really great utility, but not quite as good throughput. Then another pro of Holy Paladin is it's just fun to play. It's flashy. It's high APM. I personally enjoy high APM. Some people watching this video may not, but it feels like there's always something to do. It feels very spiky, very bursty, very reactive to the buttons that you're pressing. So if you enjoy sort of a melee support style of healer that has a lot of different utility, a lot of different buttons to press to kind of buff your group, I think Holy Paladin is really going to fit your playstyle. Now, that's some of the pros. Unfortunately, Holy Paladin does have a lot more weaknesses at the moment than they do pros. So for example, just one of the main glaring weaknesses, and this is just kind of historical to Holy Paladin, is our mobility is not that great. All we really have is those Divine Steed charges, and we just kind of feel like a wheelchair spec. Now, I'm not saying that this is something that necessarily needs to change. I think that this just kind of goes with the lore of Holy Paladin. This is how they've always been. And I think that's also part of the reason that we get so many immunities and so many tools is because we're just a slower spec. So we have to be more tanky by default. Another sort of glaring weakness for Holy Paladin is the resource system. So the way that Holy Paladin works is you build up these charges of holy power and then you spend them on more powerful abilities. That's great if you have charges, but a lot of the times you're going to find yourself in weird situations where you need some pinch strong healing and you don't have any holy power charges to use. So it's not really a major con, but it is going to be another level of difficulty, and it's going to be another thing that you're going to have to think about in your general rotation is how you're spending those holy power charges. Now, another weakness of Holy Paladin, and I kind of thought this was a pro a little bit, I think it's fun to play. However, when the damage really does start to ramp up, it can get very hectic very quickly. It's almost like you're playing whack-a-mole with health bars. You're trying to move your character around, you're trying to do damage, you're trying to hover over other people because a lot of your spells aren't passive healing. You have to move your mouse over to their unit frame and you have to press the heal button, right? Unlike something like, let's say, Restoration Shaman, you can press Chain Heal and it's going to chain to your allies. Something like Mistweaver Monk, you can heal through Ancient Teachings. You can't do that with Holy Paladin. You can a little bit with Glimmer, but for the most part, you're going to be moving your mouse around a lot and it can get really crazy. So not only that, but you're also in melee range. And when you're in melee range, there's another level of complexity and difficulty and just other things that you have to be aware of, such as, for example, frontals, for example, sanguine pools, for example, AoE cleaves. There's just a lot of other things that you have to be aware of. Now, this current iteration of Holy Paladin is not super great. I have heard that it has gotten better in War Within. So if you're staying away from Holy Paladin just because it's not super strong right now, don't let that scare you away. I mean, play it if you enjoy it. It's going to get better. Classes all the time go from strong to weak. So obviously, you know, just play what you enjoy. But as of right now, Holy Paladin's damage is very low and its spenders are really weak. Its throughput is just really not there. And a lot of our kit will actually come from damage mitigation through things like Greater Judgment, right? Your Judgment's going to absorb a lot of damage, and that's just less healing overall that you have to do, which is really nice, but it's just not enough. And I think what Blizzard's been trying to do is they're trying to take our healing and they're trying to make it more passive, which is a good thing. However, the passive healing isn't enough. And what they've done is they've taken a lot of power from our spenders like Word of Glory, and they just don't feel quite as strong as they should. So when they take power from our spenders, we lose control as a Holy Pally. We can't really direct where our healing is going, and when we need that pinch healing, a lot of the times we don't have access to it. Another thing with Holy Paladin is the way that you do damage, and it's not bad. I think it's pretty good, to be honest. It's very similar to Mistweaver Monk. You got 3 or 4 spells that you kind of rotate around, but the way that we do damage with spenders, I don't think is great. I don't like using Shield of Righteousness, only because, not because it feels like a bad button to press, but just because I feel like I'm not getting any sort of value out of it when I press it. I either need to get one of two things. 1, really good damage, or 2, some sort of mitigation out of it. So typically we're pressing Shield of Righteousness when there's not a whole bunch of healing needed. And the problem with this is during high damage phases, where we're not pressing Shield of Righteousness, we're not able to get a lot of damage out. So this means that we're having to focus more on healing. And what I think Blizzard should do is they should tie more of our damage into our healing. Kind of like you do with Judgment, right? You cast Judgment, you do damage, you get mitigation. I think some of that should be carried over to Shield of Righteousness so that it feels good to press from both a damage standpoint. I think the damage needs to be buffed on it. And then from a healing standpoint, we should get some sort of health or shield once it's pressed. Now, I do know that there is a talent for that in the Holy Tree. However, it's not that great. It's not good enough. It's not worth justifying the 2 or 3 points it takes to get to it. So should you play Holy Pally if you enjoy melee? Yes. If you enjoy a spender type system and more of a support style sort of rotation, then yes, I think you should play it. Now, with all that, you do lose some throughput. So a lot of your damage is going to be coming from your blessings. A lot of your healing is going to be coming from your mitigation. And by that, I mean, when health pools get low, it's a little bit harder to catch up. So you have to be a little bit more proactive with your spells, and you've got to sort of know what damage is coming before it happens. So overall, in terms of fun, I'd probably put Holy Pally at number 3 overall on my list of healers in terms of how fun the spec is to play. I would put it behind Discipline Priest, and then my number 1 overall is probably going to be Mistweaver Monk. So it's very fun. It's very reactive. I think it's designed pretty well. Unfortunately, they just don't have the throughput that they need right now to be considered top tier. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section of the video. Are you enjoying Holy Paladin right now? How does it feel to you? Would you recommend the spec to a new player? After all, this is an open discussion, so please give me feedback on what you guys think in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you all for supporting the channel. Please feel free to check out some of the links in the description of the video. And if you enjoyed it, if it helped you in any way, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you on the next one.